Present.
Commissioner Graves.
Present.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome you all here. I'd also like to welcome those that may be watching via social media. It is always good when we have individuals who are interested citizens that want to be a part of the process. We begin our meeting after the roll call. We always begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So sometimes it's a little quiet in here, but I anticipate tonight we will hear the Pledge of Allegiance loud and clear. And then it will be followed by the invocation, which will be led by Reverend Dale Stratton from Pilgrim Baptist Church. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for Reverend Stratton. I don't see you. Would you like to lead us in prayer?
Yep, let's do
Mr.
it.
Skidmore?
Let's pray. Father, we're thankful for this city, for this county, for this country, for this state. We watch the democratic process every day, and tonight we'll be doing the same thing. We're thankful for your love for our country, the many, many blessings you've given to us, how many times we failed to thank you, and forgive us for that. But we truly are a blessed people, a blessed country, and a blessed city. We thank you for all the wonderful city employees work hard every day, each and every day to make this place a better place. We do pray tonight for all the decisions made that they'll be with the grace and love and power from you. We thank you for this time. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Skidmore. We appreciate you kind of filling in there at the last moment. That moves us on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from our November 1st, 2021 study session and November 3rd, 2021 regular session. Is there a regular meeting? Pardon me. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
1 second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And motion carries 5-0.
That's the first
Let's
time.
think about that. 5-0. It's so good to be able to say it carries 5-0. So welcome, Commissioner Graves, and we're so glad that you're here. This part of our agenda is the public comment portion, and as you've heard me say several times, we always like it when individuals come in and visit with us about what is on their mind regarding their city, because we truly do represent you and the city that we all love so much. So I am going to read the public comment paragraph, recognizing that many of you have public comment, I believe. I don't want to assume, but I believe you have public comment that was something that's later on in our agenda. But the public comment statement is as follows. Subject to the above restrictions, persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items on the agenda may do so when that item agenda is called. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items not on the agenda and are under the jurisdiction of the City Commission may do so at the time when they are called upon by the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and any presentation is for information purposes only. The governing body will take comments under advisement. Is there anybody who has registered for public comments for an item that is not on our agenda?
Yes, we have one.
Okay.
Diane Coates.
Diane Coates. Diane, would you like to come forward?
This will be 3 minutes, I promise, if less.
Hey Diane, would you do me a favor and just move that mic down just a little bit, just because we want to hear the closed captioner to be able to hear it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I have to look back at our IT guy to
Okay.
see if yes, Matt can hear you.
Okay, I didn't get to come to the last week's meeting, but as you know, in October, you solicited the property at First and Elm with the closing date of November 2nd of this year. And although there is Kansas statute on sealed bidding, there is not one particular statute that addresses everything that's happened in the handling of the bidding on this property. However, there is substantial statings such as 209 Kansas Code 76-1720, which has to do with Atchison County, Kansas, where they are, and where we are required to publish legal notice of how it is sold. In the case, as you did it, it was listed as accepted sealed bids, and that you did. Now, on November 2nd, the bids were to be opened in public by city clerk and another who was our city manager. I requested to see the opening of the bid in public, but I never heard back from anybody. So I don't even know if it was done publicly, but it was supposed to be done publicly. I do know that your normal practice is to open bids on Facebook, but I have not found the one for November 2nd on the bid opening as of today. You placed date for decision on this property for last week, Monday's meeting at 4 p.m., in which you failed to have the discussion of my bid, which turns out to be the only bid you received for this property. According to Kansas Code 76-1720, you have the right to reject any and all bids, and in such case, any bids may be called for as in the first instance. You did not do this. While you had every right to reject any and all bids, including mine, you violated my rights under sealed bidding when you did not discuss my bid and moved to open bidding up again. You did not reject my bid, and it should have been rejected. According to Kansas Code, you have to put my bid before the commissioners' meeting and accept or reject my bid before you can resolicit the listing to receive bidding again. You did not do this, you just decided to resolicit the property. According to 14-404-1, cancellation of invitations after opening states, as a general rule after the opening of bids, an invitation should not be canceled and resolicited due solely to increased requirements like, we need more bids. Your listing stated that all bids had to be turned in by November 2nd. You gave every opportunity for bidders who wanted the property to give you their sealed bids, but that did not happen. From Gardner, Kansas, Pittsburgh, Kansas, Riley County, Kansas, and more, if bids are received after the cutoff time, then they are returned so as to not violate the bidding process for those of us who followed the rules. Like we did, we followed your rules. In Kansas statute, awarding contracts by public sealed bidding encourage competition, allows all an equal opportunity, and avoids any appearance of impropriety or favoritism. Once again, you have violated my right for an equal opportunity and now have shown the appearance of impropriety and possibly favoritism. Because now people know that there has been only one bid on the property, and knowing that the city manager told me he sent you all the copy of my bid, there is no longer an equal opportunity in the newly listed bidding process for us.
Mrs. Coates, I'm going
Yes,
to need
ma'am.
you to summarize yourself, if you could.
I'm
in
just
eight-
about done. I have 3 minutes, correct?
And 3 minutes has passed.
3 minutes has passed. Okay. There is, just because you only receive one bid, there's a statute here. Doesn't mean that you have the right to refuse it just because there's only one bid. There are 4 things that you have to go through, and I'm sure Mr. Finch should be able to tell you this. I know you don't like to see me. I don't like seeing all of you either so much right now, but the law is the law, and you did violate our rights, and we do believe that the property should be ours.
Okay. Thank you so much for your input. We appreciate your public comment. Are there others that have registered for public comment? I don't believe so. Okay.
Okay.
Great. So that moves us on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication that they have had that might influence their ability to issue or to consider today's issues impartially. Commissioners. Okay, I actually am going to, I will declare, I had communication with actually a couple people in this room. Jason Maxwell, Wade Hepner, a couple other individuals in this room, and those are the 2 that I have off the top of my head. Now, none of those communications have made me impartial, but certainly I want the community to know that I did have a conversation with both of those individuals, and they both know that I was gonna declare that. So,
Mayor,
Yes.
in that instance, I've been contacted by a couple of people also, but again, I feel like can be impartial and listen to the testimony tonight.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so that moves us on to new business, number 10.
Proclamation recognizing Small Business Saturday on November 17th, 2021.
This proclamation is in support of Ottawa's small businesses and their contributions to our community. Accepting the proclamation will be Steve Geis from Ottawa Main Street Association and Jeff Carroll, Ottawa Bike and Trail. And the proclamation will be read by Mayor Pro Tem Crowley.
And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the government of Ottawa, Kansas celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of the firms with paid employees, and they're responsible for 65.1% of the net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. And whereas small businesses employ 47% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, 88% of the U.S. consumers feel a personal commitment to support small businesses in the wake of the pandemic. And 92% of small business owners have pivoted the way they do business to stay open during the pandemic. And whereas 97% of small business Saturday shoppers recognize the impact they can make by shopping small, 85% of them also encourage friends and family to do so too. And whereas 56% of shoppers reported they shopped online with a small business on Small Business Saturday in 2020, and more than 50% of consumers who reported shopping small endorsed a local business on social media or shopped at a local business because of a social media recommendation. And whereas Ottawa, Kansas supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. And now, therefore, the governing body of the City of Ottawa, Kansas does hereby proclaim November 27, 2021 as Small Business Saturday and urges the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Signed the 17th day of November 2021 by our Mayor, Sarah Kaler.
Great. Jeff, Steve, would you like to come forward? And actually, I'm gonna come down and take this to you. But we certainly want to hear from you. We'll all just stand together. Thank you, Arlen. Did you guys step on or- See, this is small business. Okay. We'd like to hear from you.
Well, thank you. I think it's a great thing that we're making this proclamation for all the small businesses in town. We have been in business for just over 3 years now, and about 2.5 of those years were in dealing with the pandemic. But I can say that it's really the best thing for our family to have opened a small business in such a great community like Ottawa, Kansas, and the support of the city officials, the support of all the other small business owners who really support each other in every way. It's just been a wonderful thing for us, and I appreciate this proclamation, and I hope all of everyone in this room and everyone listening will come out and shop in Ottawa on Small Business Saturday. Steve, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm just want to add to what Jeff had to say. I appreciate the city recognizing the small business and what we've been going through. And of course, we all know the pandemic hasn't been on our side, but I think we're about to hopefully get over that hurdle and move on. And this kind of stuff is the things that help us to make that happen. We appreciate the community and everyone else that's involved and all of those other small businesses that have hung tough and have survived and moved on. And we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That moves us on to item 11 on our agenda.
Discussion of planned unit development for Kansas Cottages at 1742 South Elm Street.
This PUD would allow 53 single-family homes on one large lot. After review of this project, the Planning Commission, by a vote of 4 to 1, has recommended the approval by the City Commission. And I believe that that's what most of you are here for this evening. We do have a process that we are going to go through this evening, and if you did not hear when we were discussing this at our our study session, I'm going to go through it just briefly with you, just kind of give you the outline of how it's going to work this evening. So we're going to begin our presentation with this exactly. I'm just going to kind of outline for you, followed by our city attorney is going to give us just a brief overview of how the process works and what our responsibility is as commissioners. We will then move on to a staff presentation. Mrs. Lee will be making that presentation virtually for us, and I believe that there will be a PowerPoint within there. Then the Kansas Cottages will be making an explanation of their project. We will follow that by proponents of the project, which will be public comment, and we will limit that to 3 minutes per individual. We will then follow it by opponents who will be offered the same exact parameters, public comment for 3 minutes per individual. And then we will move forward after that in having some conversations with where does that take us. So I am going to begin by yielding to, before I do that, I'm going to tell you that any of the letters that we have received are not going to be read by me or any of the commissioners up here, actually any of the staff. Please know that they've been received and we have them. However, we will not be reading them and they're part of the public record. We are going to ask that you not repeat any information that is shared. If one person shares, please do not share that information once again. If you have additional information, questions or concerns, comments, please do that during your time. But please do not just repeat over and over again. We appreciate if you have given us a letter, please do not read that letter because we already read those letters. And we appreciate what you've done to really spend the time to draft a letter for us. I'm going to yield to our city attorney who is going to give us an overview on how this process will work.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. Tonight you are here to consider an application for a planned unit development. The law requires that you consider that as you would an amendment to the zoning ordinance, in other words, a rezoning, which is just to amend a part of the existing zoning map of the city. Ms. Lee is going to talk to you more about what a planned unit development is and how it allows for a common theme of development for a whole portion or a whole parcel of property. But for tonight, for our purposes, it's sufficient that you understand we're going to treat this like we would any other rezoning, taking a property from R1 to R2 or from R1 to C2. And the factors that you are going to be asked to consider tonight are very similar. Your role this evening is to act in a quasi-judicial function. That's different than the way you normally operate. Normally you're here operating legislatively. I would argue maybe more efficiently than the Kansas legislature since there's only 5 of you, but having seen both firsthand, I can tell you this one often grinds a bit more smoothly. As a quasi-judicial group, you'll be acting somewhat as judge and legislative body. And just as a judge applies the law to the facts, not the other way around, you're going to be asked tonight to apply the law to this application. How do you do that? There are 2 tests that you have to meet. One is that you are lawful. To be lawful means you follow the statutory requirements of a rezoning application and that you follow your own law. That is city ordinances like the city's zoning ordinance. The other test is reasonableness. How do you act reasonably? Courts give broad latitude to cities and counties in zoning decisions, but they do require that you be essentially fair to all parties involved, that you declare if people have talked to you outside of this meeting, and just as you did earlier, to provide assurances that you will remain fair and impartial throughout the process. To be reasonable is to not be arbitrary, to not be capricious, to give fair hearing to all of the viewpoints tonight. But just as a judge applies the law to the facts, you're going to hear a lot of, we'll call it testimony tonight, from proponents and opponents, and they will not fit neatly into categories. And so the law has provided for you some categories, some guideposts as you make your decision. Those are the factors that you see attached in the staff finding memo that each of you should have. There are 7 of those factors called the golden factors. That comes from a Kansas Supreme Court case. And then our local zoning ordinance includes, I think, 5 additional factors. I think you should have a total of 12 factors. And then in each instance, there are findings below those, some from the staff and then some from the Planning Commission. You are not required tonight to issue findings. You kind of had your trial court, the Planning Commission, review the facts of this case and give you their decision, and that's what you're looking at with those findings. But I do encourage you tonight, because one of the touchstones of reasonableness in a zoning decision is, do you use these factors as you make your decision? You're not required to, and you need not give all of them equal weight, and you may find that one of them is the most persuasive to you in lieu of all of the others. And that's all fine and good. But I think it helps to have kind of a common language as you, the 5 of you, discuss this at the end of tonight's process and proceedings, and then that you use the factors. So if you hear testimony tonight from proponents or opponents, maybe be thinking about which of these factors does this argument touch on, and give it the weight that you believe is appropriate for each of those factors. And if you do that, you'll be in the very safest channel of the reasonableness analysis as we go forward. So, and I'll remind you of that as you begin your discussions later on this evening. As you know, there is a protest petition that has been filed. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the application to you by a 4-to-1 vote. Subsequent to that, a protest petition was received, and that protest petition was determined to be valid by the Community Development Department. You have 3 options before you in any rezoning application that comes before you. You can accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. In this case, that was to approve the rezoning. Normally, that's simple majority action. 3 out of 5 of you approve it, and then you are doing that by passing an ordinance, which is the next item on the agenda. You can reject the Planning Commission's recommendation to you, and that normally takes 2/3 vote. So in this case, 3.3 of you. So if one of you can't fully make up your mind, the third of you that's on the pro side can vote yes. I can see Mike gets the humor tonight. The rest of you are a little nervous. Now, it would take 4 of you practically to overrule the Planning Commission and say, no, we disagree. And then the third option is that you remand this back to your trial court, back to the Planning Commission, and say, we don't think you looked strongly enough at this factor or that factor, and we want you to reconsider something. And that's rarely used, but it may be used, and if it is, I want to visit with you about that so we give clear direction back to the Planning Commission on what you want them to look at. When a protest petition is filed, it changes the math. So if you want to approve what the Planning Commission sent you in the wake of a protest petition, you need a 4/5 majority. 4 of you must vote yes to approve the application. If any less than 4 of you vote yes, in other words, 3 of you say yes, we want to do it, 2 of you say no, we don't, that does not pass. And having not passed, that's treated as not moving the application forward, and you do not pass the ordinance, and that's the end of the application. That does not mean that you then have to turn around and vote to reject it, because you've just really changed the math on that one element, on the approval, okay? So for all intents and purposes tonight, if you want to adopt it, it's going to take 4 votes, and any failure to get 4 votes for adoption will mean that the application fails. If the motion is to reject the application, you'll need 4 votes to do that. If that fails, at some point, you'll make a motion to pass it, and it won't get the votes, and that'll be the end of it. I'll talk more about process with you when that time comes. But just so you know that that's the calculus that you're going to have to do tonight. I want to clarify one thing, that is that letters that you received prior to this are included in the public record, but they will not be read aloud tonight. They have been read and can be read quietly to yourself as commissioners, but I just want to clarify they are being read. I didn't want any misconception that those statements will not be read by the decision makers tonight. I will make myself available throughout the meeting, as will Ms. Lee. If terms come up that you want to clarify or have questions about, for example, the term single family was an issue with some confusion as the Planning Commission went about their consideration. Feel free at any time to lean on staff to help clarify terms or say this is what the city ordinance defines single family as. Sometimes there's confusion about, you know, we're talking about different types of houses. We're talking about manufactured housing versus single-family housing. And you are always free to ask us for clarification so we can define those terms for you so that everyone's on the same page, and we're happy to do that. We'll be here to guide you in this. This is not the city's application. This is not staff's application to you. This is the landowner's application. And as I told you, you're performing a quasi-judicial function. We've talked about the judicial part. The legislative part is that you are balancing the desires of a landowner to utilize their land with the rights of the neighbors who may be affected by that development with the public at large. And that is your job tonight in a significant portion, is to remember that there's a third constituency that may not be here, and that is the public at large that you have been elected to represent here tonight. So that's the legislative portion of your job, to balance all three of those interests and try to come up with the right answer. So we'll be here to assist you as you do it, and with that, I'll stand for questions that you may have before you proceed.
Questions for City Attorney Finch?
Not yet.
I don't believe so. Thank you
All
for
right,
that
thank you.
overview. All right, that moves us on to information that will be presented by our staff. Mrs. Lee, are you available?
Good evening, Mayor. This is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. I'm sorry that we were unable to have staff in the room tonight due to some illnesses. That's fine.
Dogs doesn't like it either.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right. Don't sweat it.
Of course, hasn't talked all day, but as soon as I start talking, that's always the disruption. I am presenting basically the full packet of information that has been sent to you, just identifying what all of that is and why that is. So you have a full and complete record that was prepared from the meetings that the Planning Commission held, as well as the staff findings. In addition to that full record, you have indicated to us as staff that you would accept the letters that were sent following the close of the public hearing, and we've provided those. Some came electronically and some were submitted. In addition to that, you received another batch of letters that came directly to the City Commission as the item first started to appear on your study session agenda. So that's the full record. That record includes minutes as well as images related to the project. The project is being proposed by Brian and Jed Killow on behalf of JB Midwest Properties for this planned unit development, or PUD, to develop 53 single-family homes on one large maintenance-provided lot at 1742 South Elm. The site currently exists as manufactured home development and contains 12 units. The current site has a driveway from Elm Street into the tract. The units range in size from 900 to 1,100 square feet, with a typical layout being 1,056 square feet. And the developer has shared that the pre-manufactured housing of this size oftentimes would be about a cost of $40,000 to $50,000 per unit. But after a number of site visits and research, they selected the homes that are proposed in this PUD because they had larger windows, vaulted ceiling, sheetrock, decks, or a porch on the front, and that they felt that that provided a better value and investment for themselves as well as the community. Along with the homes, the development plan has the construction of internal private streets that would be surfaced with standard duty asphalt. Asphalt drives for parking for each unit. Two cars can park on the parking for each unit. There are no garages proposed, but as a result of some of the discussion with neighbors, the developers did add one storage shed of about 8 by 10 to each unit that would be parked at the end of the driveway, closer to where the grass would be, so that will also result in some headlight shine being deflected. The proposed plan shows South Chestnut being connected to in order to meet fire department requirements for second access. 2 detention ponds are proposed in the northwest portion of the property. The overall percentage of open space will be just over 50% of the entire lot area. And actually, it's just increased a little bit because that was from the initial proposal, and they removed 4 units from that initial proposal. The PUD, which is an overlay zone, as the city attorney mentioned, involves 2 steps: submittal of a preliminary plan and following submittal of a final plan. PUDs are similar in process to rezoning, and they do show all points of egress, ingress, setbacks, driveways, streets that abut the property, etc. Staff presented their findings and recommendations at the study session on September 30th to the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission asked a few questions of us, and then we held the regular meeting on October 30. That's when the public hearing was held. Again, staff reviewed the findings and the recommendations at the time. The applicant shared their proposal, and they provided an updated drawing that reflected some of the changes that the Development Review Committee had requested. A number of citizens spoke. The Planning Commission listened to the testimony, reviewed the letters. The applicant addressed there was some misinformation shared. And then after that, the Planning Commission discussed the total count of number of units. One citizen had suggested access for pedestrians to 19th Street, and they also talked about open space. The Planning Commission then scheduled an additional meeting for October 20 to review the applicant's response, and they closed their public hearing at the conclusion of the 13th. At the meeting on the 20th, the 3rd proposal was reviewed in light of the comments that were made during the public hearing and with the discussion with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission then did a thorough review of each finding. They were projected on the screen and discussed the language, debated it a bit, asked questions of staff. Ultimately, as written in the staff findings, the Planning Commission determined that they would adopt the findings as their own on a vote of 4-1, with a recommendation to you for approval, which was also on a vote of 4-1. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that we can. I want to show you the PowerPoint. Paul's gonna this is just some images, and I know you have some of these, but it's still helpful to see. If you'll move ahead, Paul. This is the general location. Whoops. Go back. Yeah, the general location of the tract. You can see that its current narrow driveway is there from Elm, and then in that northeast quadrant, you can see the existing 12 mobile homes. Okay, next slide. This is the layout that has been proposed by the developers and shows the private streets and then the connection about midpoint there to Chestnut Street to the north. In the west section, you can see the detention ponds that are proposed, and then it shows kind of the individual units. The developer proposed landscaping along the outer edges and had conversation also about fences. There was conversation about trash receptacles. Initially, they were proposing just a few that people would take their trash to, but in their ultimate proposal, they proposed polycarts for each site as a concession to trying to make sure that trash was managed well. As we said, this is a maintenance provided site, and the ownership it's one tract. While we've discussed individual sites for buildings, the property is actually only one tract. The construction or if the project were to move forward, the applicants would be responsible for having design done for the water, sewer, and any other utility, and then installing that at their cost. They have considered a possible rural housing incentive district, but that's yet to be determined. There's no reason to go through the rest of the process unless their application at this point is approved. So, next slide. This shows some of the landscaping. Next slide. We had also, there are times when when we rarely do this for a typical subdivision, but in the case of a PUD with all one lot, we did ask for a photometric plan. They have provided that to us, which indicates that there will not be light spilled on adjoining parcels. Next slide. This is a nice illustration because you can see the green, if you will, the grass on the site, and it indicates some of the sites that were removed from where there were an individual unit. So in the southeast corner, there was a unit proposed there, but that was removed. In the middle central part, there was a unit removed, and that was so that a trail sidewalk could be connected down to 19th Street. There was one removed in the southwest corner, and then next to the area where the private drive would connect to Chestnut, there was an additional unit there removed as well. Next slide. And so this is the final drawing that was submitted for the project. And I'm sure that even though that's on a large screen for you, it may be difficult to read, but we're happy to come back to any of these images if you would want. We just wanted you to be sure that you have them. And that's all I have unless there are questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Mrs. Lee?
I may have some after. I'd like to hear the developer, and then we'll get some questions.
I do have some questions, Mrs. Lee. Can you tell me about, because these are private streets that are being built, and how the construction of those streets? Tell me about that.
Yes, so when it's a private street, we do still require that the street be surfaced and not a rock street. We do have several alternatives in any street proposal, both public and private, as far as the composition of the street and the depth. The one thing I probably would note is that they're a bit narrower in one sense, but they do have provision for both the 2 parking spaces for each unit, as well as someone could pull up and be parallel parked on one side of the street if they needed to visit someone or if there was a gathering of some kind, just like in other neighborhoods. But it would be kind of a lay down sort of a situation, similar to places where we don't have a stand up curb. They did agree that when there were some questions about traffic going north to Chestnut and that they might be speeding through there on their side, the private side, they have proposed to put in speed bumps. Typically in a public street, we don't do that, but this is their street. They would be required to maintain it, do all the snow clearance, potholes, etc.
So to piggyback on that, then the city will not be utilizing public dollars to clean these streets?
That's correct.
And just for clarification, there will or will not be curb and gutter?
There will not be curb and gutter on the internal of these private streets.
And when does this become a public street? At what juncture does it become a public street?
Well, several things would have to happen, but it would probably be my recommendation that it never become a public street. When we've had situations where someone has chosen to build in a right-of-way, and this is not that, but if they were to build a private driveway, let's say in a right-of-way, we never call that a street until they have reconstructed it up to city standards, and then they have to have it in the right-of-way and dedicate it to the city of Ottawa. In this circumstance, they could not meet the minimum city street standard requirements, which is part of the reason that this PUD is in this kind of consideration. Because our minimum street is 60 feet wide, as far as right-of-way goes, in order to account for all of the utilities, that's significantly different than the width of these private streets. And so they would not be able to meet that standard. So I would, as staff, I would say that if someone ever proposed it to be a public street, that you not accept it.
Mrs. Lee, to kind of clarify there, you said that they could not meet it, but the reason they cannot meet it is because of how many units they're putting in correctly? Or is that correct?
Yes, so I guess interpreted the question to be, if it were approved and units were installed, could the street then be dedicated? And it could not, because it would not be sufficiently wide enough with the units still in place. It would have to really take the entire site being probably redeveloped at some point, if that were to occur. Is that clearer?
Yeah, is there accommodations for sidewalks?
Yes, sir. On one side of the private street, there will be an area for pedestrian movement around the subdivision, as well as a trail that goes down to 19th Street. At 19th Street, we do not currently have a trail this far east, but I suspect that Public Works Department would extend the trail that goes from Sunflower School to Ash a bit further to connect to this, so that anybody that was using this access point could still then make their way to the school.
The fire chief is okay for, as far as the design is concerned?
Yes, sir. This has made it all the way through the Development Review Committee. There are a few outstanding things that would still work with them on, but until they had approval to proceed, there was no reason to continue working on the engineering side of the design for infrastructure, water, sewer, and the stormwater.
It's gonna be on city sewer, but there'll be
Yes, sir.
retention ponds for the stormwater.
Yes.
I know at one point, Mrs. Lee, and this does go back into fire, and our fire chief may want to address this, but I know that we had some conversations about when cul-de-sacs were installed and about the ability for fire trucks to actually maneuver around in a cul-de-sac. I wonder if Chief Mathias, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee, but Chief Mathias, can you address the cul-de-sac that is proposed here?
Yeah, so if you remember, Tim Mathias, Fire Chief, if you remember last year, we had a discussion on the diameter of the cul-de-sacs, and we went from 70 to 80, and we're good with 80 feet, and this will meet that requirement of 80 feet. One of the issues was a through street on Chestnut, and it's due to the density of this project. You think about the number of cars, 2 cars per unit, 53 units, 106 cars. How likely would they all be coming out one egress? But and with the space between the units, we recommend 2. We have to have 2 entry points or exit points. So, but as far as the cul-de-sac, it's within city
Will
standards.
parking on the street be permitted?
I believe on one side.
Chief, the width of the road, does that create an issue for your fire trucks?
Yep. Sure does. And many streets in town, and not just this project,
Yeah.
but many streets with dual parking. We have a lot of streets. Let's take Ash. Very well-traveled street, parking on both sides. Get one of our trucks in there, we gotta, we do it, and we do it every day, but if it was up to us, it'd be parking on one side.
Yeah.
So,
And this will be a chip and seal street, not a concrete street.
I don't have the details on that, but we're on chip and seal streets all day long, gravel.
You or you needed.
Yep, we go where we go, and we get pulled out if we can't get out, so.
That's a whole
Any
other
other questions?
conversation, Chief,
Yeah.
for another day.
Yep, so, any other questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mrs. Lee or for our fire chief or really anybody else?
I do have a question that maybe it's hard to answer, but these homes are designed to be about 1,000 square feet, single family. Is there any number of residents that can live in a single family home? Like if somebody was just really stretching their budget, build a house, they got grandma and grandpa and 6 kids and 4 cars. How do we deal with that? Is there an HOA or anything involved here?
Mr. Commissioner, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. As you may or may not know, we actually do not limit the number of individuals that are in a family that live in a unit. We regulate that unrelated individuals there can be no more than 4 unrelated individuals in a single family unit structure. Because this is a planned unit development with only one property owner, I think the applicants will talk to you about the maintenance provided and how they will be responsible to deal with the individual tenants in relation to those kinds of situations. That won't be an obligation for city staff because if we discover there's a problem with parking, they will just simply have to resolve it in order to make sure that public safety can be met. In fact, it gives it a tiny bit more control in this sort of a situation than in a typical residential. And you may realize this, but there's no limit on the number of vehicles you can have anywhere.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mrs. Lee? Mrs. Lee, we appreciate your presentation to us. We are going to move on to the next item on our agenda.
Thank you.
And that would be to invite, I'm not sure who is presenting, but both of them can come up. Jed and Brian Killow with Kansas Cottages, and tell us about your project.
All right. I'm Jed Killow. This is my brother Brian. We were born and raised here in Ottawa, and I've been working in Ottawa for the past 15 to 10 years. We are continually working to find ways to invest in our community. We purchased this trailer park along with 8 acres at 1742 South M about 4 years ago. We assumed, like most would, that this property could be developed in a traditional way. We soon realized that this unique property, and that has not been previously developed for several reasons. Specifically, the layout of the property, along with the fact that it is landlocked by the surrounding developments, this restricts this property from being able to be developed with the current subdivision layout requirements, which is why we have proposed the planned unit development, or the PUD. It is evident that there is a huge need for housing in Ottawa. This PUD will allow us to put in smaller single-family homes on smaller lots, allowing us to develop the property while still able to provide reasonable price point for a moderate level income renters who may not be ready to buy a house or do not want to live in an apartment. We think from a real estate perspective that this PUD will be an improvement, given that there's an existing trailer park that is on the property currently. In regards to density or traffic, I know there's been some concerns about that. Chestnut was originally designed to be a through street connecting to 19th. It is currently a dead-end street, not a cul-de-sac. If our property was able to develop in a way other than the proposed PUD, the neighborhood may actually have more traffic than the traffic the proposed PUD may create, as it could become a cut-through for the surrounding neighborhoods to get to 19th and the school. We have limited our private road to use our existing entrance at Elm Street and the existing connection at Chestnut, essentially eliminating the cut-through traffic to 19th. The proposed homes in the PUD will be permanent structures with approximate width and will be taxed accordingly. As you could see in the provided video, these homes are very attractive and built differently than typical manufactured homes and are priced accordingly, costing roughly $100,000 compared to a typical manufactured home, which costs around $50,000. Based on these numbers alone, once the PUD is completed, it will generate substantially more taxes for Ottawa than the property is generating currently.
We encourage you to focus on what this PUD will provide to the Ottawa community as a whole, and to follow the findings of the Planning Commission. In our opinion, this PUD is the only way this unique property can be developed. And if approved, it will improve the current property and start moving Ottawa need for housing in a more positive direction. Thank you.
Questions for Jed or
I
Brian?
I have a
Yeah.
question,
Didn't know.
Jed. First of all, I appreciate the willingness and effort taken to invest in Ottawa and look for ways to provide housing for our workforce. I have a question, though, about this property. It has never, it's been a trailer park for a long time. And I think it's had more trailers parked there than there is now at one time. Could it be developed further? Could all of the land be used for a trailer park without the other the exit out onto Chestnut and the detention ponds? Could it be, you know, in the same
Just-
size as the lots are now for trailers?
Are you saying, sorry, are
I'm-
you,
I'm just asking
rephrase
about
that,
the land,
how
yeah.
many can we get in there? Is that what
Mobile
we got?
homes could be put there with the present design, the present city zoning. Have you looked
Well,
into that
there's
at all?
12, there's 12 there now. And that's all I can put on there.
So the rest of the land is meant to be vacant?
The rest of the land is vacant,
Okay, thank you.
and I can't add, yeah.
Yeah.
And these will all
Mrs.
be
Lee,
rentals.
would you like to further explain?
Commissioners, that mobile home park is an legal, non-conforming use. It cannot be expanded.
Okay.
The only way that more mobile homes could be put on this site would be a complete rezoning to a mobile home park or a mobile home subdivision.
Mr.
Thank you.
Gillo, for clarification, are these 800 square foot units or 1,000 square foot units? Because on my paper here, it says 800.
Like right around 950.
Okay. And then
It
can you,
gets a little bit confusing because sometimes they count that front porch.
which is not livable space, so, I mean, they can't. Okay. And then can you explain to me, because it wasn't answered earlier, what your proposal for the road was going to be?
The road is going to be asphalt.
It will be asphalt?
Yes.
Okay.
I've got a question, Mrs. Lee, just a quick question here. So if we did nothing on this, the present property, could it be developed into standard single-family dwellings of 1,500 square feet, half the number?
If, yes, someone can propose to do another type of residential housing. The difficulty has been, as that has been reviewed, is trying to make efficient use of the land and its dimensions with 60 foot of right-of-way running maybe down the middle and then perpendicular again if Chestnut were to be constructed, and having the infrastructure dollars in there along with the value of the homes. So as I think it's probably, if you have enough money, you can almost do anything, I guess I would say. But when they began looking at this, they were looking at ways to provide workforce housing, and we've had conversations for 2 years at least with a variety of different layouts that they've considered trying to provide everything from, I think maybe one of the smaller units that they looked at was 600 or 700 square feet up to the proposed use you have now.
Mr. Kello, could you tell me, what is your key demographic for this housing development?
We're shooting for like a price point. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Sure. That would start the answer, yes.
right around $1,000 roughly a month is what we're shooting for.
And these will be.
We're not,
Yes.
go ahead.
These will be 2 bedrooms?
2 bedrooms, yep.
Okay, and you're not, pardon me. I'm sorry I interrupted. You said we are not. What were you? and it's-
Oh, I would say, yeah, that we're shooting for $1,000.
Do you view this as a large version of tiny house living? A larger version of tiny house living? Tiny homes?
I think these homes are smaller than your normal single-family homes. So, tiny, I think, is
Relevant?
relative.
Yeah. Okay. There has been some conversation about your build-out plan. And could you tell us a little bit about your build-out plan?
So, we're gonna try to phase it where, order 5 to 10 units, and then work our way to the cul-de-sac. The first phase, we have to tie into Chestnut regardless of what we do, just because of, fire code and, the initial sewer and water, that'll have to go in first, but not all of it will. And then we'll probably try to, I'll be honest with you, we don't know how fast these things will rent out, to be honest with you. So we're gonna order 5 to 10 and then just go as fast as maybe the demand has.
At this point, and unless you've been living under a rock, you realize that there are supply chain issues in the United States. Is that a concern with your build-out?
Absolutely. So I think that's good, that could slow the thing down quite a bit.
So if you are presenting, or if you're presenting this idea that you're presenting, when you begin to put new homes on this property, when is it that you see the current existing trailer parks or trailer homes moving?
I guess it would depend on, it would be like a third or fourth phase, so I guess it depends on demand of the actual ones we're bringing in and how fast we can get them in, but it's definitely not going to be right away.
Do you anticipate being the owner in perpetuity? And
Yeah, we plan on seeing this out. I mean, you say that, but we,
our concern is it might take you 5, 10 years to develop it out, maybe not that long, because there is a demand. But it's always a concern of this high density, low income stuff being maintained. And I think of the mobile home park that was really nice on 9th and Cherry over there when it first began, and now it's blighted. And so the maintenance of it is really important, and the attention to detail and the neighbors is really important. And I know you guys will be good stewards, but is there any covenants or anything in place to make sure that things are maintained, the houses are painted, cars are not jacked up on 4 blocks and that kind of stuff?
so we have not gotten to the covenants part yet, but I will say that these are going to be brand new homes. They are going to be, as far as, we don't plan on, I think it's going to be, 4 people. You can say you're shooting for no more than 4 people, but you can only really control what you can control. As far as we hope toward the end, once we get enough in there, we do hope to have an on-site manager. We plan to, once it's all at a certain size. You know, it's in our best interest to also keep with this type of investment, we don't want it going sideways either. So we want tenants in there that, everyone wants to live there.
Will there be a central mailbox location, or will there?
Yeah, that was brought up briefly. We plan on putting it out on Elm. There'll be a central box, well, I don't know what you want to call it, that everyone can use. But we plan on putting it on Elm Street.
And it was mentioned that Chestnut was originally designed to go through to 19th.
There's an easement there.
Is that possible anymore, or is there houses built on 19 that would keep that?
No,
It's
we're
the-
actually, in the planning, we were going to, we're actually, right now, gonna build a asphalt walking trail through there. So there's an easement through there.
But not enough for a street.
No, I think there's probably room for a street.
Commissioner Weigand?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. To the south of this track, there is a dedicated right-of-way that is sufficient to build a street. The trail would be along one edge of that. So a street could still be constructed. The street construction would so when we have these unopened right-of-ways, oftentimes that's either going to take a benefit district to petition by the neighbors to open it, or the city would have to determine that was necessary and come up with a financing plan.
It seems like if we could open it to 19th, it would alleviate some of the traffic concerns, if there are traffic concerns. But I just mentioned that.
Mrs. Lee, the depth on these lots are 80 feet, correct?
Well, then, on the unit spaces, because they're not actual lots, I know that's being precise, but it's just one legal lot. Yes, I think that's approximately that. Mr. Killo may be able to answer that better.
So it shows, I believe, a 16-foot setback on the front of the lot, an 8-foot porch, and then 50 foot of the unit size. Am I correct on all that? So that leaves you 6 foot in the back to the lot line.
Mr. Killo, if you'd like to come, if you could come to the microphone, just so that our closed captioner can make sure and capture any thoughts that you have. Thank you.
Sorry, ask that question again, please.
So if the lot size, as you're calling, is 80 feet,
Mm-hmm.
it's a 16-foot setback. Once again, I'm looking at something that's on our the information that was given to us. So it's a 16-foot setback from the lot line to the front of the porch, correct?
The 16 foot is the width.
Then I'm missing a number here, because it looks to me like it's 16 this way and 16 that way. So can you tell me what the setback is then from the lot line?
I'm not sure what's required, but I know it meets city code.
Well, 25-foot city code in an R1, so I'm not really sure.
Mr. Crowley,
Yes.
I found my illustration.
Uh-huh.
The setback to the south, which would be considered kind of their side yard, if you will, or rear yard, is 15 feet. To the west, it's 30 feet, and that's largely because there's also a utility easement in there.
Wendy, can I stop you for a second? I think I know what you're talking about. So you're talking on the west side of the property, correct?
Yeah, that's where the 30 is.
Okay. You're giving me some numbers I was going to ask anyway, but that's not what I was asking. But go ahead and finish those up so I can write those down, please.
Okay. I'm sorry, because the setbacks don't necessarily apply when they're not individual lots. But on the tract, it was 30 feet on the west, 15 feet on the south. Okay. On the north, it's probably at least 35, maybe 40 feet, because we have we have a private street, and then we have detention. So that I don't have it called out as clearly. The one thing that we did ask them to do was initially, where the units are in that area where they're doubled, where they have back-to-back. Those were initially closer together, and again, as a part of the fire and building and staff review, we asked them to be sure that there was clearance of 15 feet between all units back-to-back. And so they've provided that.
And that answers the question I was getting at. I was trying to figure out what the clearance was between unit to unit there, and then also the units from that and the adjacent property. So, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't have it right away.
But the lot size is what? How wide and how deep? 80 feet deep, but
For each home, it's 40 foot wide and 80 foot deep, roughly. Some vary because it may be a little bit bigger due to the layout. But
okay, thanks.
And as Mrs. Lee, as you had indicated, and sorry, and you could certainly, Mr. Kello, connect this too, but these are going to be retained by you. You are not putting these out on the market.
correct. Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's part of the requirements that if we want to sell, we can't sell just one or two. It's the whole
gotta
property.
be all of it.
Which, like Jed mentioned,
Right.
that's not our intent, is to sell this anytime soon.
Other questions for either Kello? No? All right. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. That's going to move us on to public comment, and we are going to begin with proponents, and the rules will be the same for both proponents and opponents. We are asking individuals for 3 minutes and or 3 minutes or less. Our city clerk will be timing you, and I will be asking you to kind of wrap up if not, if you haven't kind of already done, or if you have not done so. I want to remind you that before we start public comment, that we have received your letters, we have read your letters, and that we ask that you do not repeat information. Please give us information that has not been already presented to us, and your additional comments and concerns during your 3 minutes. So we're going to begin with proponents, and I'm going to ask our city clerk if she would please indicate the first individual who's up for proponents.
We didn't have them list whether they're proponent or
Oh,
opponent,
okay.
so not quite sure.
If you are a proponent of this project, here you go, this is what we're learning. If you are a proponent of this project, now is your time to speak on behalf of this project. Are there individuals who would like to speak on behalf of this project? Greetings, Mr. Bean. How are you this evening?
Hello, Commissioners. Paul Bean, 35 Westwood Circle. I guess my position I'm presenting tonight is sort of the public at large. As you know, my focus was economic development with the FCDC, so I'm kind of looking at this from a community-wide perspective. I wanted to bring forth as a reminder some of the notes that you've seen and comments you've seen in the housing study that I presented to you this past summer. Even if we don't move anywhere on economic development, that study indicated we already needed 56 units over the next 5 years, rental units over the next 5 years, just to catch up on our rental market.
How many did you say, Paul?
56 over 5 years.
656.
56 over
Every
the
year.
next 5 years.
Okay.
If our sales, however, in Franklin County are up 44% in 2019, I think they continue to go up, and so if that trend continues, that's probably a low number. But again, that 56 is just based on static. We have potential if we want to capture growth in workforce, which has been my focus. We have 4,600 individuals that enter the city every day that do not live in Ottawa. If we captured 1 to 3% of that daily influx, that would represent 46 to 138 new households that could live in Ottawa, building homes, paying rent, taxing on those facilities, buying things, sales tax, on and on and on. As industries expand and invest in the community, the available workforce continues to shrink, and housing is a major component of this concern. I've shared with you some of those challenges in previous meetings. The other thing that we do need rental housing. Our median household income in Franklin County is significantly lower than other counties, and we're way below the national average. But really, if you look at the region, our median income is lower. So again, that emphasizes the need for rental type housing for our workforce. We all understand, and I'm sure everybody in the room would like to pay fewer taxes. We talked about taxes as an issue and a deterrent, and I know you as commissioners have taken great lengths to work on that. But if we don't grow our housing, our taxes are going to go up. The cost of fire, sheriff, police, water, electric, sewer, everything we need from the city isn't going to get cheaper. It's going to get more expensive. And if we don't have more people living here, then your taxes are going to go up to pay for the same services. So we need more homes. And 56 units there would be a pretty good tax revenue boost to us, and not to mention the sales tax that would be generated by those occupants. And then lastly, just this has an impact. Your challenge to me has been find an industry for Proximity Park. That was a $26 million investment made by the city and the county to help this community grow and help this county grow. So there's already a significant taxpayer investment in that. And so to not support growth, and I know I need to wrap up, to not support growth, I think is saying, well, we're not sure that 26 was a good expense. Well, it's a little late to do that. As you know, we had an industry that looked at us. We finished second, and the reason we lost out on that industry was workforce and housing. We didn't have enough workforce. So I hope that you'll consider this as an opportunity to support growth so we can attract industry, as well as support our existing industry who's struggling as they work on it right now. It's an issue for the entire community. I know it impacts a particular area of the community, but it's something that also is a concern to the community at large, and so that's why I bring that forward tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other individuals who would like to speak on behalf of this project?
Mayor Kayla?
Yes.
Commissioners?
Would you do me a favor and lower your mic
Yes.
just so there are...
There we go.
Thank
Is
you
that better?
so much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, my name is Eileen Bowling, and I have lived on Ash Street. Oh, thank you very much.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine. That is fine. Sounds, I can, yeah. For 27 years, I've lived there. My home backs up to the property, the proposed development at 1742 South Elm. I would welcome the vacant land to be developed into nice housing, development that could be considered consistent with the homes surrounding that area and behind me. I'm aware that Ottawa needs more housing, but I am absolutely opposed to putting 53 modified mobile homes lined up like matchboxes in my backyard. It would be terrible for all people surrounding this and development, just bad for them, and it would also be bad for the future development for the city of Ottawa. Please don't let them contaminate the area with this kind of development. Who in the world wants to invest in homes in the vicinity what will absolutely be perceived as a mobile home park? The city is moving in this direction. If the development is approved, I will be forced to spend thousands of dollars to put up a privacy fence for my safety and to block the offensive view and noise of 53 modified mobile homes packed into a little more than 8 acres. The question is, will the Planning Commission approve a variance for me to put up a needed 8-foot fence? Thank you for letting me share my concerns.
Thank you. We are going to continue to ask for proponents. Are there proponents that are here to speak on behalf of the project? All right. Then we will move to opponents, and the same rules apply. Everyone has the ability to certainly speak. We ask you to speak for 3 minutes or less, and please do not repeat yourself. Who is the first individual on our list?
Clarice Dingle.
Clarice, come on up. And you know what? We're going to give you the tutorial on how to do this really fun podium, and I'm sorry that we haven't done that yet.
Perfect. Maybe a little higher. There, okay. No, I want it lower.
We'll get it
I'm gonna- I gotta see
We
it.
got 3 minutes to get it right.
Okay, don't ring that bell yet, he's not there.
You're fine. You're fine, Clarice.
That's fine, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You didn't yield your time to him. Don't worry.
Okay, my name is Clarice Dingle. I live at 504 West 18th Street in Cuttings Edition, and 20 feet from the proposed development. That's going to be at 1742 South M. I'd just like to clear up a few misconceptions. There is not a mobile home park behind me. I keep saying about the mobile home park. There is not. Yes, there is 12 dilapidated mobile homes, but they are sitting on land that is zoned residential 1 low density. When we decided to build next to this land, we checked it out. When the site in question was zoned R1 low density, the mobile homes were already there. But apparently the city commissioners at the time did not want that land to be used for future mobile homes. The existing mobile homes were grandfathered in. That meant no more mobile homes would be allowed, ever. When the present ones are gone, that was supposed to be the end of mobile homes, but here we are. The Planning Commission and the developer would like us to believe the units are not mobile homes, but they are mobile homes. They have just been modified. They may not technically be called mobile homes because they're going to be attached to the ground, but in reality, there will still be 53 mobile homes, and attaching them to the ground will not change that. Anyone who doesn't perceive this as a mobile home park is lying to himself. If the developers don't want this to be perceived as a mobile home park, they shouldn't use mobile home lingo. The materials they have submitted refer to these buildings as units. Anybody, do you call your houses units? No. And on page 96 of the documents, the developers show a picture of the back end of the unit where a door can be installed. The picture identifies that backside as the hitch end of the unit. Does any dwelling but a mobile home have a hitch end? It is time to deal with reality. The question is a mobile home park right in the middle of a nice residential homes good for us, or is it good for the city? The city is moving in that direction. Will a mobile home park help or hinder the development? This next misconception the Planning Commission is perpetrating is that the mobile home park will not hurt property values. Common sense tells anyone that's not true. Kansas law states, and I quote, that you or your real estate agent must disclose to the buyer all adverse material facts that you actually know about the property. Just imagine this scenario. I decide to sell my house if you approve this. I want to sell it before the construction begins. I tell my real estate agent, I want to sell it I don't want you to tell the prospective buyers about the coming development. The real estate man agrees. The home sells and the buyer moves in and soon discovers the coming development 20 feet from his doorstep. He sues. When I tell the judge I think I didn't have to disclose the coming development because the Ottawa Planning Board said it would not affect my property values, the judge enjoys a good laugh. Bottom line, I lose, I have to pay big bucks, and the real estate salesman loses his license. Any reputable real estate salesman will tell you living next to this particular development will cause your property values to fall. Please don't approve this development. And one last note, when you're talking about development of this land that's behind me, it would be perfect to just extend Cuttings Edition. And you're talking to people who don't want to do that. Talk to a developer, talk to some developers. I can't understand why they can't develop it to match our development. And Ash Street has nice homes. It's a perfect area to develop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dingle. We appreciate it. The next individual on the list?
Ryan Newswater?
Ryan? Hello, welcome. If you'll just state your name so that we have it.
Yeah. It's Ryan Nicewinder. I live at 1721 South Chestnut Street. I've lived in Ottawa for over 9 years, and I had the pleasure to serve our community at the Franklin County Sheriff's Office for 6 of those years. Tonight I come to you as a citizen and concerned father of 3 small children. My wife Taylor and I bought our home on Chestnut Street about 1.5 years ago and couldn't be happier with the neighborhood we live in. The neighborhood has several appealing homes with different styles and appearances, and we believe the character of our neighborhood is unmatched in Ottawa. When Taylor and I bought our home, we also had the peace of mind of knowing we purchased a home on one of the safest streets in town. However, the development of this new addition will change all of that. If this development is approved, it would have a direct negative effect on the character of our neighborhood, as well as cause a huge safety concern for all of the families and their children on Chestnut Street. These 2 factors are directly related to the staff findings 2 and 11 that were proposed to the Planning Commission and that are being proposed to you now. First, finding number 2 concerns the character and condition of our current neighborhood, and the staff states that because the proposed PUD will allow only single-family residential uses, the proposed development will be consistent with the character of our current neighborhood. Commissioners, I attended the previous Planning Commission meetings and witnessed one of them ask the staff if they were basing the definition of the word character off of if the homes are single-family residential homes and nothing else. The Planning Commission was told that this is how the staff define the word character, but they had the authority to change these findings. I would argue that the word character is not defined simply by if the homes are single-family homes. The word character also includes the overall appeal of the homes, the style, the layout, as well as the lot size and the people living in the homes themselves. All of these things put together are what give a character or give a neighborhood character. As you know, our neighborhood is currently zoned as an R1 low-density area, and I want to emphasize the term low density. In contrast, these proposed development is for 53 smaller homes squeezed together approximately 12 to 15 feet apart on lots less than half the size of our current neighborhood. Based on the layout of the homes, I think that any member of the general public who were to drive through this development would have the perception that they were driving through a mobile home park. In the Planning Commission meetings themselves, one commissioner brought up the fact that the perception of these homes would be that of a trailer park. Another commissioner agreed, summarizing that even though by definition these homes may not meet the definition of a mobile home, the perception would be that they are mobile homes, and he went on to say that perception is reality. This perception was such a concern that the Planning Commissioners asked the applicant to reduce the number of homes and the density of the development to help in reducing the perception of this trailer park. The Planning Commission also brought up the concern of having the applicant add a storm shelter to these plans, and it was later mentioned the only current type of housing required to have a storm shelter is that of a trailer park. Now, if the perception of these homes isn't a trailer park, then why would the thought of adding a storm shelter even be brought up? Commissioners, I agree with the Planning Commission in that perception is reality. Therefore, allowing these densely packed small rectangular homes to be built right in the middle of our neighborhood would absolutely change how our neighborhood is perceived and negatively impact our overall character. The next and most important staff finding I will discuss is finding number 11 regarding the public safety and welfare of the surrounding community. And I again disagree with the staff finding. The members of our community who will be the most directly affected by this development are those of us that live on Chestnut and the surrounding area. To say this development will present a gain to the health, safety, and general welfare of my family, my children, and my neighbors and their children is a complete misrepresentation. And I believe I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your thoughts. The next individual on the list?
Dale and Deanna Fox.
Dale or Deanna Fox, do you have thoughts that you'd like to share? Okay. No. All right. Excellent. Who's next on the list?
Philip Mahon.
Philip. Okay. Yes. We'll get to you, sir. Did you sign up on the list?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll call your name here in just a minute.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Sir, we hear ya.
I'm Philip Mayhew, live at 1709 South Maple. Just wanted to get on the record that I am against this project. I do understand being in business and wanting to make a dollar. I'm all in favor of that. But if you can rezone it for PUD, you can rezone it for residential. Develop it as houses, put them on the market, sell them, make your dollars. Don't do something that's going to decrease our property values. That's all I got to say.
All right. Thank you. The next individual on the list?
Virginia Bruce.
Virginia Bruce. Come on up.
My
Do you
name
want-
is Virginia Bruna. I live at 1722 South Maple. I'll begin with a quote I found by a man named Ralph Nichols. He says, "The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The best way to understand people is to listen to them." The full room here tonight, as well as the overwhelming attendance at prior meetings, shows we want to understand and be understood. It's evident that thought went into the guidelines that were used to determine if the PUD should be allowed. I feel the guidelines lend themselves to opinion. It's puzzling to me that the members of the Planning Committee voiced a lot of concerns about certain aspects of the PUD at every meeting: density, safety, perception, etc., right up to the end of discussion, but still voted to allow this proposal to go forward, with the exception of Mr. Crowley. I'd like to respond to the builder's changes that we were not allowed to comment on at the last meeting before the vote on the PUD went forward. In response to density, the builders decreased the units by 4. 4. Please hear our voices now. In an area usually housing 22 families, this PUD would have 53 families, also making that space smaller with the water retention need. This is overcrowding and would be negative to the renter's quality of life. In response to safety, the builders increased the green space. These areas are not safe. 2 are located at the south corners with units right next to them and will more than likely be backed by a fence or boundary. The others are by the water retention area and on the space to put a walkway to 19th Street. They did not have accessibility and safety in mind. Again, is this good quality of life for the renters? Also, in response to perception, as my neighbor behind me just said, guideline number 2 addresses the character and condition of the surrounding neighborhood and its effects on the proposed change. The finding addresses the issue of character as only single-family use, thus meeting the guideline. I disagree. In an article I found written about saving neighborhood character, the writer talks about the neighborhood character meaning the look and feel of the area. No one would say our neighborhood now looks crowded. The PUD would certainly look different than our neighborhood. The density would be way different. The feel of the neighborhood would become one of non-permanence, less peaceful by more activity, and with the density, a sense of less safety, which is a main concern of the nearby neighbors. Development similar to ours could be built. One road with a cul-de-sac, similar to Redbud, over by the middle school and on other streets in Ottawa. Redbud has 14 houses. The PUD area could do 17 to 18 with the water retention area and be in keeping with the neighborhood character. This PUD is not right for future renters and not right for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruna. We appreciate you being here. We are going to move ahead and call Stan Hindman. And I've got it wrong. Please correct me. I mean no disrespect, but I certainly want to hear from you.
A little wrong.
Okay.
Anyway, it's
People get my name wrong all the time, so I'm used to it.
it's Stan Hinman.
Okay.
Hinman. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I had a lot of things I wanted to share, and I've been thinking them over for several nights, and then I figured, well, someone else has already said it, so no one cares anymore. But anyway, I was thinking about this whole project. To me, it would seem like it would fly a lot better if the housing units were either flats or duplexes. Gives more room in the neighborhood, more room to park, more room for driveway, and it just makes it nicer looking neighborhood. It was going to be a multi-family neighborhood. And I just do not like the idea of, my grandson, if he went through there after it's all up and running, he'd say, "Are we in Arkansas yet, Dad?" Or Granddad? No. So anyway, I'd say build it more of smaller units to take up more space. But I was driving around town, also see other places where nice moderate homes could be built. And the other thing with it is, we talk about having an on-site person living there to manage the property. Well, if the person owned the unit, then they have a dog in the fight, and they're gonna take care of the property, and they're not gonna quit in 2-3 years from now, and they'll be gone, and then there you are, stuck with this place. So that's it. I just think build a better house, a little smaller, leave a little more space, and I think people would like that. Okay, that's it.
Thank you for your input. Who is next on the list?
Gilbert Bruna?
Mr. Bruna.
Good evening. My name is Gilbert Bruna. I'm at 1722 South Maple. My concern is the precedent that this will set. I believe at the second meeting, the developer said that these houses would be built to HUD specs, and manufactured homes that are built to HUD specs since the early 80s is actually a mobile home. Those are built to HUD specs. They're called manufactured homes now. So when you put in houses of this density, this size, this shape, and you say that it can go into anything that is classified as R1, anybody in any of your neighborhoods from now on out, if they want to go and buy 5, 10, 20 lots, put these houses in as a density of 2 to 1, and call it a PUD, I believe our attorney would be the one who have to answer this, but I don't think that you would have a hard time letting them not build, because they could point to this as a precedent that says that this is now a high-density, single-use area within a residential area. So I think that this precedent may be bad for the whole city of Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you. Who is next in order?
Frankie Cross.
Hi, my name is Frankie Cross, and I live at 538 West 18th Street, next to the proposed development. Excuse me. Like all my neighbors, I am opposed to this development because of the sheer density of the buildings. I think the development like this will diminish my feelings of safety and to value our neighborhood. Because they are renters, they have no real stake in our neighborhood. But I want to speak about one aspect of the development that I am very familiar with, and that is water. Lots of water, and where it is going to go when we have a heavy rainstorm. I'm afraid the amount of water coming from Elm Street and the new development will double to triple after the development is built. There will be so little vacant land to soak up any water, and lots of asphalt to speed the water to me and my neighbors. The holding pond on the proposed development will help, but will it help enough? Can the developers guarantee the residents of Cutting Addition that they will not be adversely affected by all the additional water? My backyard has a storm drain, and when we have a rainstorm, the water comes from Elm Street and the field, and it overwhelms the storm drain. There is so much water that flows through there. There is also, there is also a natural waterway that runs between the land and the houses on 18th Street. The only way for water to reach the retention pond is through the storm drain on our property, which already backs up with heavy rains. I do have pictures if you would like to see them of that. Okay. Their retention pond placement will not retain the natural waterway, which may cause flooding of yards and possibly homes. There is also water that is collecting to the west of my storm drain, and it runs behind the homes on Willow Street, and it creates flooding behind those homes. That water also goes to the holding pond. The flooding water is a big concern for these elderly people that live there on Willow. The rainwater is eventually channeled underneath 17th Street to a drainage ditch on the other side behind the homes on the 1600 block of Willow Street. and along the city-owned land to the west. That, I think, is called Lakeside Park. I heard by the grapevine that the city sold some of the home lots along 17th Street, but decided not to sell additional lots because the runoff water from the new homes in that development was becoming a problem, and the present drainage ditch would not handle any more water. So if this is true, how can the city now approve a development that will cause much, much more water to flow into that very area? Thank you.
Thank you. The next individual,
Jason Maxwell.
Jason Maxwell.
All right, thank you, guys. Jason Maxwell, 417 West 17th Terrace. I'll go ahead and skip my part about the safety, density, character of the neighborhood. Per your wishes, I think that's been done to death. I'll go ahead and skip to one of the staff findings. I think it's number 7, how long the property's been vacant. So I want to talk about that a little bit. In my view, let's remember that every development, especially on the south end, was a field before it was a development. Okay, where we live now, I grew up, that was a field. Westwood was a field. Eastwood was a field. Okay, those were all fields. Long before they became residential developments. A few years ago, when the north half of Westwood was still a field, the developer was long gone. I was part of a project that bought all those lots on the north side of Westwood. We wanted to put duplexes in, okay? It was a field, nothing was getting built there. Okay, we came to the city. The staff recommendations were, yes, you can put duplexes there. Part of the reasoning was it's against Eisenhower Road, there's a church to the north, there's some apartments there, all that. The Planning Commission, in all seriousness, in their infinite wisdom, said, no, we're not gonna allow you to do that. Our group thought about it and said, you know what, the Planning Commission's right. They shouldn't let us do that. We didn't appeal it, we did nothing. Now look at Westwood. It's done. Mr. Bean lives there. It's regular homes, great neighborhood. Eastwood is now following suit. But like I said, and that was a more practical place to put duplexes because it was on edge of town, and it was also duplexes that were gonna match the existing neighborhood. But I will still say the Planning Commission did the right thing in denying us, and as Ottawans, we realized that after the fact. And now I live out there, I'm appreciative of that fact. I guess my point is, I think as a community, I've lived here for 45 years. We shouldn't be short-sighted. I read Mr. Bean's letter, and I think you guys have it in your commission materials. In the final paragraph, his comments that housing is needed. I totally agree, housing is needed. I have rental properties in this town, I get it. I'm just saying this type of housing in that particular neighborhood is not the place to do it. Mr. Bean's letter said, well, the proposed use is better than what the property is currently being used for. Okay, I agree, but there's something I don't understand in that reasoning. Because something is better than nothing does not compute to me. It doesn't translate into that's good or that's right. In my opinion, it's the argument of a second-class city who says, hey, we've got a piece of property, sorry, I'll wrap it up, right in the middle of a neighborhood. We got somebody that wants to do something there, so let's go ahead and just throw something there. The south end is where there's good positive growth. It's going south. I'm sure that's one of the reasons the city put the new school out south. We all know where it's moving. That's good positive growth. And I think that's it. There we go.
Thank you. Who is next on our list?
Have Brad and Terry Ledker?
Brad and Terry. No. No. Okay. No, hi, Brad and Terry. It's all right. It's okay if you don't want to talk. That's all right. Don't worry about it. That's all right.
Neither did we.
So, hey, glad you're here.
I don't want it there.
Okay.
I don't have anybody else, but we might want to check if anybody came in late.
Are there individuals who did not get an opportunity? I mean, Brad and Terry got an opportunity, and they signed up, and they didn't want to, but now maybe you didn't get a chance to sign up, and you want to talk. Are there individuals who would like to address the City Commission? for this particular project? I'm going to call it one more time. Are there individuals who would like to address the City Commission on this particular project? Okay. What we're going to do is we are going to take a 5-minute break. And just for my fellow commissioners, we're going to take a 5-minute break so that we can all come back with a chance to use the restroom. I mean, really, that's quite honestly what we're doing. So, commissioners, just remember, we're just going to take a 5-minute break. We will start back at 8:45, and we will move on through the public hearing. So, give us just a few minutes. Thank you. do my best. All right, thank you so much, and thank you for giving us just a couple minutes to stretch our legs. That's going to move us on to a response by the project. So, Mr. Killo, would you like to respond to any of the comments that were made?
Yes, I'm Brian Killo. Obviously, a lot was brought up, so I guess one thing that was addressed was the water. That's obviously going to be addressed by the engineering and city-approved plans. You know, detention ponds and all that. Excuse me. So, in regards to the Cuttings division or addition, so Chestnut has always been meant to be a through street. So there's always going to be more traffic coming through there. It was not, you know, a cul-de-sac, kind of like Jed mentioned. You know, we're not doing anything different on that end of adding cut-through traffic. This property is not a field. It is a existing trailer park. So that goes back to what Jed said earlier, is that, you know, this is a unique piece of property, and given the, you know, the layout of this property, the shape of it, you know, we truly don't think there's any other way to develop this property. And if it is, you know, if this PUD is not approved, it's going to remain a trailer park for the foreseeable future. You know, I know a lot of people think that it can be a typical development, but just that's basically it. And then trying to think if there's any other issues. I guess if you have any questions, I'm happy to address those that I might have missed.
Other questions for Mr. Brian Keller?
Yeah, Brian, how do you address the issue of the mobile home? The mobile home perception, the hitch
like I said, I
end,
mean,
those kind of things.
It was there when the Cuttings division was built, so I mean, I'm not sure on how that affects the property values. If that's what you're referring to. I mean, like I said, if it remains a trailer park, I don't understand how that changes if the perception is a trailer park. I feel like, you know, yes, these are smaller homes, and, you know, I think, yeah, they are manufactured, but they, as discussed, will be taxed as single-family permanent structures. You know, so if it was a mobile home park, that would not be the case.
Well, yeah, they're not mobile.
Exactly.
They're on a cement slab.
Correct, and with concrete blocks around.
Yeah. But will they be transported in or built on site?
They are manufactured, so they will be brought in and then made permanent.
I see.
And so that's why they will be, you know, taxed as permanent structures. So that's how. Is that not correct?
This is where one brother's fighting the other brother. So which goes?
Just wanted to
Jed,
clarify,
do
you said slab, they're gonna be footings. There's gonna,
Regardless, they're going to be permanent structures.
other questions?
I'm not 100% familiar with the site, but can you answer a few questions for me here? Northeast corner, I believe there is a fence, an existing fence that runs west. Does it stop at Chestnut, or does it continue on?
I believe that stops at Chestnut, and then there's a row of trees on further west.
So is there any other fencing surrounding the property?
Not on our property currently. No,
Okay.
there's
Just adjacent homes?
adjacent homes.
Okay.
there's a
Do
few
you have
others.
any intent of fencing?
No, we addressed it with, we're planning on planting in more evergreen trees for coverage, but, you know, to put a fence in, a lot of those trees would have to come out, and there's a lot of landowners that would prefer I would imagine would prefer the trees to
greenery.
remain, rather than all the trees be removed.
Thank you.
So it is a type of fencing, really. It's just a green fencing. It's a
Uh,
live
correct.
fence. Okay. Other questions? Do you, either Brian or Jed, do you anticipate that any of these homes will be subsidized rentals?
No, that is not the intent.
Yeah, that's not your
No,
That's not your
yeah.
desired rental?
Yeah. So basically, that's kind of after the price point we're at, where it's someone that's not ready to buy a home, but they also don't qualify for subsidized housing.
And so, remind us again, when did you acquire this property?
It was right about 4 years ago.
Okay. And I have a question, and it may be it's revolving around you guys, but also a question for a couple of staff members. Since acquiring this property approximately 4 years ago, I wonder, Mrs. Lee, I have to look to make sure. Yep, okay, she's on my list. Mrs. Lee, can you address any codes violations or any issues that may have arisen since this land has been acquired?
I'm not aware of any. I'm sure if Judd O'Brien has received a letter that can identify that to us. Certainly when I did codes enforcement myself years ago, it was a regular occurrence to have inoperable cars or a number of items of debris, but I'm not aware of any recent activity there now.
And so then that would go to the next department that I'd like to ask about any particular activity on this property as it is currently. And I wonder if our police chief may come up and address if there have been any crime issues or any increased patrol or any increased calls to your recollection since this property has been acquired.
Adam Weingarten, Police Chief, Mayor No. I'm able to pull up some data during the meeting, and I went back about a year just because that was about easy for me to pull sitting back there in the internet connection. But in that particular area, 1742 South Elm, there's been one call for service in the year 2021. So no substantial history, even in the additional neighborhoods to the east or west of that. And anyone can kind of look at a new resource that we just rolled out for our community crime map. So if you don't know the link, go to our Facebook page and get that. And you can actually see all reported crime in the city of Ottawa, and you can drill down to your particular neighborhood and kind of see what's going on around you. That data only goes back into the earlier part of 21 just because we brought that service on this year. But moving forward, you'll be able to see that live feed for that.
We appreciate that infomercial.
Thank you. Thanks for the plug opportunity.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Thank you. That was my question, yes.
Thank you.
Other comments? Pardon me, gentlemen. Are there other comments that you'd like to share with us?
And just another question, you're not seeking any kind of tax abatements on this proposal, is that correct?
We have not yet, no.
Okay.
Have you looked at the economics of making it less dense?
So yes, that's been kind of, we came up with the number of where we're at. It was brought up at the Planning Commission, and we, like I said, to keep the price point to where we were trying to keep it at, where Ottawa can manage. That's the number we kind of need to have in there to keep the rents at a reasonable level.
Other questions for the Killos? No? Other things you'd like to share with us?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So this moves us on to the portion of this hearing in which that we will enter into discussion among commissioners and with request as needed from staff. Before we enter into that discussion, commissioners, I want to kind of throw it out there that if you have questions about individuals who may have made a public comment and you need a clarification from them, now is the time to do that. Are there individuals or are there commissioners who have questions from either proponents or opponents regarding any of their comments from today?
Wendy, I've got a question on that item 2. When it talks about it consistent with character of the neighborhood, it appears to be very subjective on how to define consistent and neighborhood. Can you help us, is there a definite definition for consistent with the character and the size of a neighborhood?
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. The character and condition of the surrounding neighborhood and its effect on the proposed change is really kind of what we're looking at. And if you read all through that, we noted that the majority of the area is single-family residential, although there are fairgrounds to the east. And so when we're looking at a rezone, sometimes we're looking at is there something in the neighborhood that is affecting the fact that the property hasn't changed to date. As far as the finding goes, as the proposed PUD will have only single-family residential use, we felt it was consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And I guess I would call out, because I certainly heard some of the neighbors' concerns about that. When you look at the permitted uses in the residential zone district, there are uses that obviously we as a community have already determined fit the character, but that might have been more challenging for the neighborhood to tolerate. And that would include a large church, bed and breakfast, lodging houses, group homes, safe homes, and schools. And a number of those uses would have in fact put a demand on the streets and the traffic around there in quite a different way than the proposed single-family units. And so it's in comparison with a lot of things, not just this one to that one, but that what else could be allowed there. And that is part of why we commented about the single-family use. In our low-density residential, R1, we also allow, by conditional use permit, 2-family dwellings, 2 or 3-family dwellings. And so had the use even proposed, as one neighbor mentioned, a series of duplexes, that might have been that some people felt was not consistent with the single family area, okay, which is the permitted use. And so and you could compare the amount of density is probably more similar to if it were a 2-family subdivision or 2-family series of units, as far as the number of units compared to the lot size itself. But what we really focused on really was that they were individual single-family units.
So the value of the homes don't seem to indicate nor dictate the consistency of the character of the neighborhood. It's more just the fact that it's single-family.
I would say that's right. Although I know that when we looked at the images of the units, because they, in our mind, were not similar to a mobile home unit, in that they were not made of metal. In fact, if you looked at the construction video, they were on floor joists. They were all wood structures with normal insulation and normal siding and interior finish, as well as even on the video, and the developers were willing to do asphalt shingle just like any other stick-built house. Those were the kinds of things that we considered for this.
All right, thank you.
All right. So I'm going to circle us back around to the question that I had asked. Are there questions that you have of individuals who have given public comment on proponents or opponents at this time, commissioners?
No, but the lady that spoke about listening, listening makes decisions really hard because you got two ways to go. We need this kind of a development somewhere. I think our decision is just location. I listened to Paul speak to, we all know how much we need affordable housing, rental housing, people that are beginning their lives, whether it's marriage, work life, or whatever it is, need affordable housing, and we need people to come to Ottawa and live here and grow up to where they can buy single-family homes and do the things that everybody wants to do eventually. So, and I've been developer and heard traffic concerns and quality concerns and those kind of things that I think are really important to neighbors and to those who endure traffic. So we hear those kind of comments and take them seriously. We also hear when we demolish a building or a house from the neighbors who want the house demolished, and we take that very seriously. That is one of the main, I think, determining factors of whether a house should go and be leveled and taken out of the neighborhood for more quality construction. And I know the Kellos would do a quality project. There's no doubt in my mind that things would be done right. And they would do whatever they could do to make it the best possible development for this type of housing. So it's not easy. And if you want to fill a room with people, I know from my county commission days, you talk zoning and you talk change. And so I'm very pleased with the turnout tonight, although it is a discussion that causes us to pause and reflect on where we're going and what we want to do and where we want to do it. So that's all for now, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Weigand. Seeing no other questions for individuals who have given public comments today, I'm going to ask Mrs. Lee to lead us in a discussion about the findings that she has, and I believe that she has a PowerPoint for us.
Yes, Mayor, this is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. Paul Summer, our IT Director, is going to get that PowerPoint up for you. We thought it might be helpful in your endeavor for us to just call to everyone's attention the specific findings that were presented by the staff and Planning Commission, so that as you consider whether you want to return this item, that you would be specific to which findings, or if you have questions about any one of them, like we just did here a minute ago on finding number 2. So the first one really has to do with the change of classification. And when you're doing a PUD, it is an overlay, and our ultimate kind of finding really has to go with, at this particular site, it would be a good use, and that it would provide a particular type and price point of housing that has been much discussed, as was just alluded to by Commissioner Weigand. In addition, done correctly and conscientiously, the development can preserve property values within the surrounding established neighborhoods that are adjacent.
Mrs. Lee?
Slide, please. Oh, yes, sir.
Can you tell us if there are any other existing PUDs?
Yes, sir. There are a number of existing PUDs. There's several, let me say it that way. The most recent was the Heartland Residential Development. That is where the former Lincoln School is. That's a PUD. They did some unusual things there as well in order to get the number of units that they were proposing. Another example is Washburn Towers, which has, again, a number of residential uses, but they also wanted to have some commercial and public uses in with their structure and deal with the needs related to parking and use of an existing building. One of the longest PUDs that we've had is really where the Home Base and Crime Time Grill and Fusion Alley is. Originally, that was a Walmart PUD. It extends all the way north to the car wash and down, and includes the McDonald's kind of on the south end. In fact, there'll be a proposed amendment to that PUD, and we've amended that PUD several times over the years. Those are the most ones that are coming right to mind, but I think we have one or two others.
Thank you.
Staff finding 2?
I did just cover this one, but we felt that because it was because this proposed use was only single-family residential uses, and as I said a minute ago, there were a number of other uses that could be proposed in a R1 low-density district, that single-family designation of the units was actually more in character with the neighborhoods around than some of the other uses that are allowed in R1. And while the homes are smaller and smaller areas than their immediate counterparts, the nature of the development is clearly completely residential. Slide 2, 3, sorry. Whether the amendments made necessary because of changed or changing conditions in the area affected. The proposed amendment's not necessary because of changing conditions in the area. There's been no, if the fairgrounds were to change, that would maybe be something that would change, could have effect in this particular finding. This type of development has been the topic, though, of much discussion with both city staff and the Planning Commission about requests for smaller homes, and further, over the time that I've been with the city, trying to come up with ways that we can create more affordability by not having overwhelming infrastructure costs. So that's part of why we also said that, because of the housing discussion. Finding 4. This one, though a PUD is treated as a rezoning, it's not a change in nature from residential zoning. The intensity and the arrangement of lots, though, and the amount of open space is a variance, is different from typical zoning. The PUD will not have any detrimental effect on existing or nearby land uses and will make use of vacant ground as well as provide a highly desired type of housing within the community. 4, 5. Whether every use permitted on the property or reclassified would be compatible with uses in the immediate vicinity. The uses under the R1 are all the same as those adjacent, so this factor is not applicable. 6. Has the property been basically restricted in its current use? No, the site's been rezoned, is zoned for single-family residential development. 7, the large portion of the lot has never been developed, as we've talked tonight. And from our perspective, looking at how you do with easements and roadways, it would be challenging for a typical subdivision to be done per the subdivision layout requirements. And this is one that the Planning Commission spent some time talking with us about as well. Finding 8. City policy and process for the installation of the improvements will ensure that the facilities to serve the development are adequate. And I might add here, just back to the comment about the stormwater, because I know that comment was raised with us. Our engineer will ensure that it meets the same requirements that were in place for any other subdivision in the community. Finding 9. This one is there, sometimes when you're looking at a rezone, the question would be whether you have a sufficient amount of land zoned. This one, our response is the subject site's location and surrounding single-family residential development makes it suitable for infill development. Utilizing a large, mostly vacant piece of ground for this type of development shows initiative and investment in the community's differing populations and offers a more diverse type of housing than has been seen usually in the community. 10. Whether it's in conformance to and enhance the city's comprehensive plan, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Developing a vacant block into needed residential housing will further enhance the implementation of the city's comprehensive plan, particularly regarding the provision of adequate, safe, and attractive housing within the community. 11. Whether the gain to public health, safety, and general welfare outweighs the hardship imposed by the applicant by not upgrading the value of property by such reclassification. The findings above, well, and there's a skip there between some conclusion. There's more narrative in your document. The proposed location is suitable for single-family housing. The use of vacant ground in an area where these uses are already there does present a relative gain to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. 12, we didn't have any other factors that we felt needed to be identified. 13, and it's really not a finding. This was the recommendation as it comes to you from both staff and the Planning Commission, that the applicant plat, which means complete the process. As I said at the beginning, this is a preliminary PUD. The next stage is to provide infrastructure plans and have all of the design formally approved to meet our standards. And then they have to submit a final plat that would come before the governing body as well.
Ms. Lee, I have a question, and possibly maybe it's for the developers, but was anything looked at, it looks to me like you could move the entrance on Elm to where you could have an ingress and egress if you put the entrance to the little bit to the south and a little bit, and the exit out to the north a little bit there, and avoid the Chestnut issue. Has that been looked at?
So let me be sure I understand, Commissioner. You're asking, did we consider
Two entrances,
having
two,
built
yeah,
the
an exit
street?
and an entrance on Elm, or both two-way streets there instead of the one on Chestnut.
Oh, I don't believe there's so from the fire department standpoint, and Chief Tim can speak, they need separate entrances. It's because if something were to happen, let's say there was an accident at that private drive towards Elm, at the same time that there was a structure fire within the subdivision, they want two separate, clearly differentiated spaces in order to get their equipment in and out.
I understand that, but separate the entrance, separate the entrances and exits further. Take out the one that's shown, move it to the south, move it to the north edges of the property, and have that.
Oh, so, and maybe, Paul, if you could go back to one of those early slides where it shows sort of the layout in relation to the neighborhood. The entrance that goes to Elm is sandwiched between two residential structures now.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I can tell you the full width of that. I might have it in my drawings here. But if you look at that, the driveway is the bulk of what that exit entry point is. There's really no way to separate it any further because they would have to, they would be on someone else's property. If your comment was instead of going to the north on Chestnut, had anyone looked at going to the south?
Yes.
If there's an open street, if there's an open street, typically we don't force someone to build an additional block of street when there's an adjacent open street. That additional block that would be, if there was a proposal to go to the south, I don't think that's a problem from a planning perspective. The question really would be who's paying for that block of streets. Because there's other property owners down there who would benefit from that.
We could, if it was a TIF project, that could be done.
Well, so if we're in rural housing, incentive district is really the only applicable incentive that could be done here. When we do those, it requires the applicant to front all of the costs for infrastructure, and then over time, they're able to get funds paid back to them. But it does require them to make the complete investment up front, unless there were some other arrangement made with the city to participate in that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, Commissioner? We rarely, as staff, if there's no street there, we require a street to be constructed. But when there's access to two streets, we don't ask for a third street to be constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes,
Can-
sir.
Can we go back to staff finding 9, please? And can you explain to me what staff means by offers a more diverse type of housing than is usually seen in our community?
Well, so when we had our conversations with them about housing, a lot of what we have seen in recent years has been, well, we've recently seen some infill that are about 1,500, some 1,300, and we do have some builders that are doing some 1,000. But a lot of our housing in the last, in completing in the subdivisions that we have are much larger than that in square footage. So that's really what I think she was referencing, was that oftentimes we have 3-bedroom units, 2-bath, some with basements and some not. But they're larger units, and that can sometimes make it difficult for people from an affordability standpoint. And in contrast to that, we've had duplexes when we've talked about rentals. And before that, we had some multifamily that was proposed, but not a series of single-family units for rental.
So staff means more so size than nature of the build.
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Although I will, well, never mind, I talked to you about the construction.
All right, Mrs. Lee, thank you for presenting staff findings for us and the findings that we will be weighing in on during our discussion. Commissioners, at this time, let's enter into some discussion, not that we've already been having some, on where you'd like to see this process go.
Well, I'll start us off on this. First of all, I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. It made our country great and it made our city great. And I think I like this plan. I'll say that in and of itself. I know the housing report said we need more housing, and I've talked to customers at the bank that live out of town that love to move to town, but they can't find some kind of quality rental property to rent. And the operative word is quality. There's plenty of rentals, but if the roof leaks or if there's no driveway and some other issues there with the house and leaky windows, that's not really a quality rental. So I have the highest respect for the Kilo name. Three generations, I believe, here in town, and I'm familiar with all of them, and your name is well respected in our community. So I want to say that first of all, and I thank you for bringing something to us to help us try to fix this housing problem. I totally understand that. I'm just having an issue with the location. The density is an issue. I hate it when I can see both sides of an issue. It makes it more difficult to make which way do we go on this thing. And this is certainly one of those things. I'm right on the fence on this. But I guess I am leaning toward the density as an issue here that we need to address. And I'm not so certain that this particular project is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. When you've got a $100,000 house and then 20 feet away you've got a $300,000 house or $400,000, to me that I'm having a hard time getting past that consistent with the character of the neighborhood. So I'll just stop right there, but it's a tough decision.
Like I have some of those same concerns. Some of it would go away if we could get another, if we get maybe a little more screening and another exit out on to 19th. But it really, it is it's a need. It's well planned. Location is troublesome. I think we have other places that might fit better, but that's not the Kilos plan. Yeah, it is not. That's what the judge says. That's why he keeps a quarter in his pocket so he can make a decision. But we're here to decide somebody's fate.
I have a few concerns too. Quite frankly, one of them is the build out. I'm concerned that, because the word was brought up, demand. If the demand is there, that they'll continue to build out. But if the demand is not there, you know, that project could be, it just could be sitting there, not moving forward. I agree with one of the comments earlier about setting a precedent, and I myself don't want to set a precedent. And I agree with Paul. The best way to help lower taxes is by spreading that burden. But I've done some, and keep in mind, it's elementary math. I could be way off here, but for a $100,000 unit, you're looking at about $1,800 in taxes every year. Spread 3 ways, that's $600 the city gets. Times 53 units, that's $32,000. I don't know if $32,000 is worth moving forward to accept that project and jeopardize the surrounding areas.
Looking at it only for property tax, Commissioner, I think Paul would expand that into new families, new cars, new groceries, new insurance, new
Sure.
Gas, new kids in school, and those kind of things. Does have a multiplier effect in there. But I'm troubled by the density and the location.
Madam Mayor, I would like to express some of the same concerns that my fellow commissioners have, density being one of them, and also safety in general, not only the through traffic on the streets, but also even at the proposed entry point off of, I guess it would be Elm. Those streets aren't through streets either. Like Elm curves around to 19th. That's also not a through street. Chestnut ends 1 block to the north, or maybe 2 blocks. So I have a hard time imagining that much traffic on streets that are also not really through streets. And it just feels, while I would like to vote for housing, it almost feels like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, like we're trying to make it work and it might not be there. So those are my concerns.
I think Chestnut certainly was built to be a through street, but I don't think it was ever, a project like this was ever in their mind to be built there with the density that would be brought upon that road for their future thinking. I mean, I just don't think they ever thought there'd be another roughly 106 cars going up Chestnut. So I agree that it was probably built for a through street, just not for this purpose.
I might elaborate a little bit. If the number of individual units may be a problem, but if it was a 2-story apartment complex, you'd have a different deal on the parking and on the areas, the green space. You might still have the traffic problem, but the density of the build wouldn't be as much of an issue if you had another Sienna South or something like that there, rather than the individual homes so close together, and the parking and the traffic condensed into a very small area. So I'm just throwing that out as a way to look at it. I don't think it'd be as problematic with that kind of a structure rather than the individual small homes. What do I know?
Other thought, commissioners? If there are no other thoughts, it has been, City Attorney Finch, would you like to review what are our options at this point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. I think it's been a good discussion tonight from the proponent, from those who are opposed to the project, and then the discussion that you all have had here. The options that you have, recall, are to take up a motion to approve the ordinance that is in the next agenda item. And I think now that your discussion is done, I would call up that next item, and you can either have a motion to accept that ordinance, to approve the project. That would take 4 votes. You can have a motion to deny the ordinance, to basically overrule the Planning Commission. That will also take 4 votes. Or you can have a movement to remand this issue back to the Planning Commission for further study of one or more of the factors that have come before you. It sounds like from the discussion that you'll have a motion, probably either the former or the second type of motion, probably not a remand. It sounds like you all have the evidence and the facts you need in front of you to make a decision tonight.
As a part of this discussion, can this die for a lack of a motion?
Because you're dealing with a request from an owner, I would advise you to take up the ordinance either with a motion to deny the ordinance or a motion to approve the ordinance. If you fail to get enough votes to pass it, that's basically treated as a denial. You have to have 4 votes to pass the ordinance. If there are 2 votes or 3 votes in favor of passing the ordinance, it simply does not pass in the light of the protest petition, and the application is deemed denied. If the comments indicate that people are not in support of the application, then you can take up a motion to not approve the ordinance and basically to overrule the Planning Commission's recommendation. I would prefer you have affirmatively one or the other action, so there is a record.
Could the motion be to remand with certain criteria the Planning Commission look after? Would that be?
Yes, that's the third option. That would send it back to the Planning Commission. As we said at the beginning, I'd want you all to be very specific about what factors you feel the Planning Commission need to study further in order to, because it will then come back to you. The Planning Commission will take it up. They'll go through an analysis of those factors and send it back to you. And you'll have the consideration again before you on what to do with what they've sent you back. Any questions on any of that?
What is the will of the commission on this, PUD?
I'm leaning towards making a motion
Would you like to make a motion?
I would.
Madam Mayor, would you call item 12 on
formulate
the
it.
agenda?
Yes, I can call item 12 on the agenda.
Request for
Before we do
approval
that.
of ordinance rezoning 1742 South Elm Street.
This ordinance would rezone the area from city R1, low-density residential district, to R1, PUD, low-density residential with planned unit development overlay district. I believe Commissioner Wygan, you were...
The rezone doesn't necessarily approve of the applicant's request. Are they tied together?
Yes. The rezone is to approve the planned unit development, which is the preliminary plat of which has been before you tonight and which has been put on the screen. So a motion to approve this would approve the project going forward. A motion to deny this ordinance would stop the project at this stage.
Where does the remand back to the Planning Commission come in?
That would be a separate motion that one of you could make to remand it. As part of the discussion of such a motion, I would ask that you be specific on what you want them to consider.
I will make a motion to remand it back to the Planning Commission to further study another street outlet and lower density of the structures.
Do you want specific findings noted in that, City Attorney Finch?
I think that basically it would be implied that with character of the neighborhood, effect on surrounding properties, some of those factors would be implied. If you want to get specific in the discussion, Madam Mayor, you can, if there's a second to the motion.
Is that your motion, Commissioner Wigan? Is there a second on that motion? Is there a second? The motion dies for for lack of a second.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'll make the motion to deny item 12 on our agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we deny the recommendation of the Ottawa Planning Commission regarding the ordinance rezone, or the rezoning. Is there any discussion among commissioners?
I'd like to say something here. I learned a long time ago that no problem can withstand sustained thinking, and I found that to be true many times. And I think with this subdivision, we've heard several times that single-family homes can't be built in this shape and this size and this dimension. But I really think if there's put some good minds together, there could be a way that would be consistent to the neighborhood. Single-family homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, typical homes that are selling very well here in town. And I would like to see the Killos try to approach something like that. If that's not going to be feasible or not, I'm getting head shaking no here. But to me, I think there's got to be something that could be done that would fit within the neighborhood.
Any other discussion on the motion?
No, I appreciate the value of the project, the importance of the project, the value of the input of the neighbors, the seriousness of the discussions, but I'm still troubled with the location and the density, so be that as it may.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we will proceed to vote, and voting in favor of this motion would deny the rezone.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand?
A reluctant yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Crowley?
Yes.
And Mayor Kaler?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you to everybody who has been here. We appreciate it. We do. That moves us on to item 14 on the agenda. You don't have to go. You can all stay. Please stay.
5 minutes.
Yeah. We're going to be here another 7 minutes, and then we're going with you. Do you want to, Wald? Oh, okay. Because if so, stick around.
We're going to close with breakfast.
Yes, with breakfast that you're serving, Wald.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right. So next is number 14 on the agenda.
Request for approval to add 8 residential properties to the Neighborhood Revitalization Program.
All the properties are located within the Neighborhood Revitalization District. Addresses are residential new and selling, 926 South Locust, 930 South Locust, 1043 South Locust. Residential new and rental, 1037 North Sycamore. Residential remodel, selling, 529 North Oak. Residential remodel rental, 606 North Oak, 310 West 6th, and 503 North Sycamore. Is there a motion to approve these residences?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
First off, I should have said this earlier. I am a contractor on a couple of these projects, but my compensation does not change whether it's accepted or not. So I just wanted to be transparent. And that being said, I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve these 8 residential properties into the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Is there any discussion?
Keep them coming.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, item 15 on the agenda.
Request for approval of loan application for American Eagle Fund.
Grandpa Barry's Guitars has applied to borrow funds to expand their space and hire a part-time employee. The review committee has reviewed the application and recommends approval by the City Commission. Mrs. Lee, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
This is-
What do you have to tell us about this loan application?
This is Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. As we discussed in the study sessions, this is a loan application for $10,000 for a period of 4 years at a rate of 2% interest. The applicants have an existing business but hope to grow it, and that is the purpose of the loan application that they've made. The review committee reviewed their financial plan, their other application documents, and recommend to you to approve this loan. We would use the loan and promissory notes that we have used on other American Eagle loan projects, along with the personal guarantee statement that we used in the most recent loan approved by the governing body.
Questions for Mrs. Lee regarding the loan application? If not, I will entertain a motion if there is one.
I'd like to make that motion that we approve item 15, the loan application.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the loan application for the American Eagle Fund. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Graves?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiteand?
I vote yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Kaler?
And I vote yes. Motion carries. That moves us on to comments by our city manager.
I have none.
Speak into the microphone, please.
I have none.
Sorry, I had to. Make sure it's on the cassette recording, the cassette tape recording, you know, make sure.
Oh, my goodness. How'd she do?
Is that you have none?
I have no comments,
Okay.
commissioners.
That moves us on to reports by our city commissioners. Mayor Pro Tem Crowley.
I'd like to say I think we've had a great meeting tonight. Thanks to the public for showing up and the insight from everybody that was here. I know it sounds funny, but some of these meetings get a little boring, you know, the 10-minute meetings, and I know it's fun to get in and out of here, and I don't necessarily like being here 3 hours, and I'm sure Milton's changed a couple cassette tapes out there, but, you know, we'll get past that, so that's all I have.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Wygand.
Yeah, I have no comment. Good meeting.
Commissioner Skidmore.
Just 2 words, cassette tapes.
Cassette tapes, yes. And to our newest appointed commissioner, Commissioner Graves, what reports do you have for us?
I don't have any, but I did misspeak earlier, and I told you, or I mentioned it was like fitting a square peg into a round hole, and I was going to use a cassette tape into a CD player, but I didn't, so there you go.
Wow, okay.
She's coming out swinging.
That moves us on to reports by the mayor. At this time, I do not have any reports, although, actually, I'm going to take that back. I do want to thank, and I know that everyone is essentially gone, so, and I'm sorry to hear that, and we do love the input, and I love the input. I can't speak for everybody, but I do love the input, and I think this is exactly why our city is great. We can have a conversation, and it can be respectful, and we can respectfully we can respectfully disagree with others. I do have complete thanks to both Jed and Brian Killow for bringing this project to us. I do believe that we'll hear something again from them, and I hope that will happen very soon. I appreciate their willingness to think outside the box, and I encourage other citizens to do that again soon. If there's nothing else to be brought forth for us today, I do want to note that we did remove the airport from our agenda today, and I promised our city manager I would call upon him at the very beginning, and I did not do it, so I'm sorry. But we did remove that from our agenda, but we will be addressing that on Monday. Announcements. We have a study session on the 22nd at 4 p.m. We are closed for Thanksgiving holiday, the 25th and 26th. On the 29th, we will have study session. Canceled, don't even come. On the 1st, we will have our regular meeting at 7 p.m. If there's nothing else to be brought forth to the commission today, we will adjourn at 9:43.